Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. We are still on the beat in the 2nd Congressional District, and as we settle into 2 primaries, they're newly recast with the upcoming retirement of Congresswoman Annie Kuster. She's already endorsed in the Democratic race. Her pick is Colin Van Ostrin, the former executive counselor and 2016 Democratic nominee for governor, who is our guest this morning on Close Up. Colin, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
So you're not coming at this entirely unknown. You've been around, you're known to a lot in the Democratic Party, but you've still got to reintroduce yourself to some voters and articulate top issues. So what are Democrats getting if they nominate Colin Van Ostrin for Congress?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Adam, and thanks for giving me a chance to be here. Close Up is one of the few places in New Hampshire where you can do this show, and then all week people are saying, hey, I saw you on Close Up.
Thanks for the plug. There you go.
So thank you. Thanks to everybody for watching. And I'm incredibly honored to have this chance to run. I'm running for a very specific reason. I think we need to fix a Congress that is completely broken at this point. The truth is, I think most of us feel betrayed and have lost trust that our government is working for us. And when I say broken, I mean we look down there and we see often extremists, particularly on the far right, that have just kind of thrown so much sand in the gears of government that it stopped working. And sometimes we see powerful interests that get their way. They seem to be able to rig things for their own favor. But I don't think there are enough people who are fighting for everyday middle-class families like the one that I grew up in. And so when I say putting people first is how we fix this, it partly is about restoring our trust in government, saving our democracy. But specifically, it also means there are some things we need to do to show government's on the side of people again. I'm 45 years old. For 42 of those years, women had basic fundamental rights they do not have today in this country. We need to pass proactively a law to protect the full range of reproductive rights, IVF, birth control, abortion access, no matter where you live. And we need to do something real about household costs. I mean, I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old. I've spent thousands of hours in recent years sitting outside basketball games talking to other parents. And what I hear constantly is, I can't move because mortgage rates are so high, or housing prices have gone up, or my kid's coming back to live with me because they can't afford their student debt, or do you know how long I have been waiting for my kid to get into childcare on a wait list? I mean, these things are crushing everyday families, and we need a government that does something about it.
You touched on the abortion issue there. Obviously in the Democratic Party these days, identity is so big. Why should a man be the standard bearer on this issue in the 2nd Congressional District?
I'll tell you a story. When I was 31 years old, I ran for executive council in this state. And it was when, first of all, the executive council is something not many people know outside of New Hampshire at all. My executive counselor at the time was a man named Dan St. Hilaire, representing a light red district. Pretty popular guy, kind of put himself out as a moderate Republican, and then led the effort to successfully shut off Planned Parenthood funding in our state. Birth control, cancer screens, annual exams. And it just seemed crazy to me. It was something that had never been controversial. There are folks who come from a place of good faith who might identify themselves as pro-choice or pro-life, but that is something that never had been controversial, and it was successfully shut off. And I spent a month or two that summer trying to talk to people about running. And asking who could we get to run against Dan, because this does not represent us in my community of Concord. And I was on a dog walk with a friend named Lindsay, who worked at the Women's Fund at the time, and she said, Colin, why don't you run? And I went and I talked to my wife about it, and she thought it was a good idea. And I talked to a good friend of mine named Judy Reardon, and she thought it was a good idea. And then I talked to our Congresswoman, Annie Kuster. And I said, Annie, I don't know if this makes sense or not. I knew her from helping with her first race for Congress. I had never run for office myself before. No one ever dreams of being an executive counselor when they grow up. And I said, I'm 31 years old. I have a 1-year-old at home. I've got $100,000 in student debt. And by the way, I'm a 31-year-old straight white guy running to get Planned Parenthood funding restored. And she said, Colin, this takes all of us. This movement takes all of us. And what we've seen in the decade since, that is even more true today after the Dobbs decision. I am proud that we won that race, got Planned Parenthood funding restored. When it was shut off again, came back and got it restored again, that I worked to help build a majority on the Executive Council in favor of funding, and that I've been outspoken since on these issues. One of my proudest moments in public service was being awarded the Champion for Choice Award from NARAL Pro-Choice New Hampshire for that work, an award that Annie had gotten a few years earlier. I really do believe it takes all of us. And I don't think that we can have just, people of one gender or one class or one part of our state fighting for one issue or another. We have to have people who work for common ground, and that's the sort of candidate I'm going to be.
Do you have a personal belief about when a fetus becomes a person?
I believe these are decisions that should be 100% of the time made between women and their medical professionals. I don't think they need male politicians or any politicians telling them what to do.
But you just said it takes all of us. Do you have a personal belief, though, about when a fetus gains personhood, the right to life?
Well, I'm running for Congress, and what I will do in Congress is support a national law to protect that decision between women and their doctors. And by the way, I've got nieces and nephews because of IVF today. I don't think these are issues that pit people against each other as much as folks in Washington seem to think. I believe there is extraordinary common ground in this state that supports the full range of reproductive rights.
Your lone primary opponent right now is someone at the State House who really leans in on a lot of progressive issues. Just a few days ago, she was before the House Criminal Justice Committee advocating for a bill that would make it easier for parolees to get off of parole. Are you that kind of Democrat? Do you believe broadly that it's a good idea to unencumber people from the criminal justice system?
So I'm running for federal office. I haven't followed all the ins and outs of the State House. And I almost laughed a little when you said, are you that kind of Democrat? Because I really believe in common ground. I have been proud to have progressive support in my past campaigns. When I ran and won the Democratic nomination for governor, there are progressive groups nationally and locally that supported me. I actually was proud in that effort. A majority of Bernie Sanders' steering committee in New Hampshire and Hillary Clinton's steering committee both endorsed me in that race. And I think that's the kind of leader that we need, not just within the Democratic Party, but a month ago I wrote an op-ed with a Republican friend who served in the Trump administration about the need for Ukraine funding. Isn't that what we want, is leaders who will look to find people that they agree with on all sides and try to make progress for everybody?
You mentioned Trump. A lot of Democrats call him, quote, an existential threat to democracy. Do you agree with that statement?
I do.
So then how do you potentially work with a Trump administration, on issues like infrastructure, if you want to take a moral stand and yet he's the president?
Well, look, you always have to look for common ground. I will say on infrastructure, by the way, I am proud that, well, we had 4 years of Donald Trump saying it was going to be Infrastructure Day and then Infrastructure Week, and we never actually got an infrastructure bill. I'm glad that we actually do now, that we had a bipartisan infrastructure bill that's bringing our own tax dollars back to the state of New Hampshire. But I will work with anybody to get things done. I mean,
even if you believe they're trying to destroy the country.
Look, I've had many political disagreements with Chris Sununu, and Chris Sununu, I think, is off his rocker to say that he supports Donald Trump, while in the same breath he says he believes that he tried to create an insurrection to overthrow our democracy. But that didn't stop me from working with Chris on a lot of issues on the Executive Council, sometimes friendly, sometimes as opponents. He finally came around on Planned Parenthood funding. One of the reasons is we put a lot of pressure on him when he was wrong, dead wrong on that issue, and he flipped and voted the right way, in part because of how close an election was. By the way, I'm proud as a candidate who sits here before you, the only one who hasn't served in Congress or as governor before, who has actually won the 2nd District of New Hampshire. We are facing an existential threat for our democracy. Anyone who believes this is an important race needs to have the confidence that they're voting for someone who's going to win. I've won this district before and we'll win it again together.
Immigration is another top issue these days. It's hard to imagine Congress coming together on one of these grand bargain type deals, but if it's there on the table when you're in Congress, if and when you're in Congress, what do you want to do about the 10 to 12 million undocumented people who are here? Should some of them be deported, or do you want a path to citizenship for all of them?
So I actually don't think it's impossible to believe that we can make progress here. And one of the reasons is we just saw a bipartisan border security bill pass the United States Senate. And I watched myself on TV during the State of the Union while Senator Langford, one of the most conservative Republicans in the U.S. Senate from Oklahoma, who had authored that bill, muttering words. You could see it on TV. He was agreeing with Joe Biden on border security, and a bill got passed out of the Senate. So I actually think there is a path forward. I'm disgusted that that stopped in the House, and I think it's purely because of politics. And I think both on border security, where we have a good place to start now, a bipartisan bill, and also immigration, where we do need a pathway to citizenship for people who've lived here for effectively their whole lifetime, who have not committed crimes, who've paid taxes. Of course, these are productive members of our society, and we should include them with a pathway to citizenship. Look, if somebody's committing violent crimes or has done other things that doesn't have a reason to be in this country, they shouldn't be. But I don't support mass deportations. I think there's more common ground than most people realize. And let me add one last thing on immigration, because most of my work's been in the private sector. Immigration is a mess. If you are an employer, I've lost 3 employees before because of visa renewal application problems or typos or errors by the government. And when you lose an employee and you then have to backfill that position, they're literally still in this country, but they can't work, and the company is being held back from its growth. It is so frustrating. It's the sort of reason people are sick of Washington. I do think we can make progress. It's not going to be easy, but I think we got to keep fighting for it.
You mentioned the private sector. I do want to touch on something that may come up in this race. I'm not sure if it will. You know, in 2022, the company that you helped to lead, Alumni Ventures, got dinged by the SEC, had to pay a $4.7 million fine. The CEO had to pay a fine over allegedly misleading investors. Now, the alleged conduct took place largely before you got there. There was a small amount of overlap, a few months, but what should voters know about what happened?
Well, you know, that company in its early years certainly had some issues that they had to deal with from a compliance perspective, but it was well before I was there. My only involvement was helping them, you know, fix those and get up to speed, and I'm really proud of the work that they've done. This is a company that has helped everyday investors, accredited investors, invest millions of dollars in fascinating startups all across this country. I have a ring, it's called the Oura Ring. It's one of the companies that we invested in, monitors heart rate and body temperature. I actually knew that I had COVID a day before the test told me because what I saw from the ring. And I think that sort of power of innovation is really important. It's happening all across this country, and I'm proud of being able to help innovative companies like that.
All right, Colin Van Oostrum, we've hit time, but we'll be back here again talking about more issues in the future. We'll see you out there on the trail.
Thanks, Adam.